Just have to take a quick minute to thank our sponsors, Yellow Dog Paddle Guide Service, Eddie Mackin's Rip and Lips Fishing Trips, Expeditions Fly Fishing LLC, njfishing.com. Also our supporters, Mike K's Guide Service, Psycho Jigs, Lip Glue, Signal 11, Nor'easter Hardcore Apparel, and FC Fish Company.
Andy, welcome back to the NJ Multispecies podcast. I know you've already been here before.
Thank you, Joe, for having me.
And I'm sorry for being in a car.
Yeah, you gotta excuse Joe. Andy, usually he does much better introductions for people, but he's a little out of sorts today. He basically got kidnapped. Got kidnapped, got dragged down to look at those. Yeah, those are.
Hey, priorities, right?
Those are the guys who abducted him.
Yellow Dog Paddle, Mike Herman, ton of new stuff up on their website, yellowdogpaddle.com. Has a frequent flyer program now. That'll give you the opportunity to do like 3 to 5 trips during the whole year at all different times. Great for retirees. He's also teaching fishing lessons. If you want to buy your own boat and get it set up like his, he'll go into a more in-depth lesson on what's going on the boat and talk lessons. And still, your traditional Yellow Dog Paddle trolling trip is firing off already this month on Round Valley Reservoir. So call Yellow Dog Paddle and book your 2025 trip.
Hello and welcome to episode number 97 of the NJ Multispecies podcast. I'm your host, Joe Santiago. As always, my partner, Chris Pereira.
Dude, are we really going to do this with you? Where are you? Where are you? Tell everyone where you are.
All right. I'm in Virginia catfishing with Mark Medusky and Chris Lito. I'm on my way back, and I didn't make it in time for the podcast, so I'm in the car.
Can they hear me?
No.
Okay. And tell Chris Lito he's awesome. I love him. Tell Mark Medusky he's a fucking failure.
Chris
I'm not
said
supposed
Chris
to curse.
Lito is awesome, and Mark Medusky is a failure.
Did you guys catch anything at least?
We did. We caught a lot of fish. No monster one, but we caught a lot.
No big ones at all?
No giant ones. I'm sorry that the car is shaking too.
Is he just hitting every speed bump that he can find? What's the deal?
Yeah, it's horrible. It's a horrible ride. Tonight's guest, Andy Laffey, RBTA. We're going to talk about. Well, I'm probably not. I'm probably leaving, but whatever you're talking about.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna have to kick you off of here in a minute, but well, just so everyone knows, so tonight's episode was supposed to be something completely different. So, there's guys online who fly fish, and I'm sure everyone has seen this. There's like this small niche of fly fishermen that have something negative to say to everyone else that isn't in their little niche. Anyway, we had a couple of discussions with a lot of them, and a couple of them were tolerable. So I invited them on because we invite everyone on. We always say it and we mean it. Anyone could come on. Everyone's invited. We've invited plenty of people that don't agree with us. They don't usually show up. And this is another case of that. Basically, they bitched out and they didn't want to be on it. So what we're going to do, we're going to have that Andy Laffey can come on. I'm going to kind of play devil's advocate in the way that I'm going to bring up some of the topics that they were arguing with me, even though I don't agree with them. I'm going to bring them up, see what Andy Laffey thinks about them, but I know he's not going to agree either. So unfortunately, we don't have anyone that's going to agree with the one side, but we're going to bring it up anyway and see what kind of conversations come from it.
And this one side is just ridiculous. And they threaten us over pictures. It's just absurdity. I'm surprised they backed out of coming on.
I'm not surprised either, and we kind of planned for it. But yeah, I mean, some of them are, tolerable, like I said, but a lot of them are just ridiculous. I mean, a lot of this started from them bashing Chuck Manny posting a picture of a stock trout laying on the wet grass next to the stream for a picture. So he caught the fish, unhooked it, placed it on the ground next to the stream there, took a picture, and released it. These guys are bashing him over. They think every trout that touches the ground dies. They think every trout that gets removed from the water dies. I mean, it's just crazy, like elitist type stuff. So
it is that is elitist, basically, especially when you're preaching your shit on someone else.
It gives a bad name to fly fishing, honestly. Because I have nothing against fly fishing. I like fly fishing.
I do.
I don't like being. It's like I don't want to go fly fishing and have someone associate me with this little niche of guys that do this crap. That's basically the bottom line.
Yeah, and any fish that you didn't catch on that specific setup is worthless.
It's ridiculous. It gives a bad look to the whole fishing community. I told them that they're like skid marks on the fishing community underwear. So I think Andy Laffey's ready to come in. Are you gonna stay, or are you?
Hello, gentlemen.
Is Madosky gonna crash the car? What's going on?
What do you want me to do?
If you want to stay, you stay. I mean, it's up to you. Let's cut and set Andy up.
I'll stay until I get annoying.
All right. I could do these, by the way, if you give me the info. It doesn't matter to me.
I just make all this up anyway. It's all just made up stuff. You ready?
She counted down already.
Oh. Eddie Mackin's Rippin' Lips fishing trips. The ice is off Lake Apacon. Chris was just there with his boat. Eddie Mackin is ready to take the lake back. He's out of the woods. Hunting season is over, so legally he's being forced out of the woods. He has no choice. But Mackin's Rippin' Lips fishing trips back in business. Already pan fishing. Pan fishing is hot on the lake. You could book your trips with Eddie Mackin today. You're guaranteed to fish with Eddie only. Also, doing the red-eye trips, again, if you're fishing by yourself or have no one else to go on a fishing trip with, he'll match you up with someone else available on the same availability, and you'll go fishing and hopefully make a new friend. And the pontoon boats for rent again. So Mackin's Rippin' Lips fishing trips, serving all your Lake Apacon needs this summer. Okay. njfishing.com, 27 years as the #1 resource in freshwater and saltwater fishing in New Jersey. Also, if you're looking for that next charter or party boat trip, they are all listed on the wall, NJF. Also, the forum, you could get onto the forum for free. They're separated, freshwater and saltwater. All you have to do is email Jerry Zagorski and tell him your username and password, and you're in. You log in. It gives you the entire backlog, too, to the forum. So you could look at years and years of just posts and posts long before all this Facebook shit even started. njfishing.com. Check it out today.
Okay, so tonight's guest is Andy Laffey. He is the writer of the RVTA Newsletter, member of multiple private trout clubs around New Jersey, and a member of, which one is it, Andy? Heroes on the Water or the other one?
Project Healing Waters.
Project Healing Waters. You're also a member of a lot of other groups, too.
Correct.
All right, well, Andy, welcome back to the NJ Multispecies podcast. I know you've already been here before.
Thank you, Joe, for having me.
And I'm
Thank you,
sorry
Chris.
for being in a car.
Yeah, you gotta excuse Joe. Andy, usually he does much better introductions for people, but he's a little out of sorts today. He basically got kidnapped got kidnapped, got dragged down to, look at those. Yeah. Those are
Hey, priorities, right?
those are the guys who abducted him. What was that?
There is currently an Amber Alert out for a small, handsome boy missing.
With no facial hair.
No facial hair.
Oh yeah. Well, you should have seen him before. He had the phone like tilted up at himself, and it was like 90% chin, like little bald chin, with a little face on
about
top.
Half his face right now, so.
And you're lucky. Just
yeah.
Andy, let's throw you right into the fire.
Just go for it.
You're a member of two of the biggest privately stocked trout clubs in the state of New Jersey. One of the arguments that these people brought up was that New Jersey should stop stocking trout altogether.
Yeah.
That's just insane. Why do you pay for a license?
Their claim was, and again, like I'm just kind of playing devil's advocate, trying to give you any information that they gave to me when they were trying to argue with me about this online. They claimed that the wild populations are self-sustainable. That was one thing. And that, just continuing to stock, whether it be the state or the private clubs, was just hindering and or damaging these wild populations of fish.
Well, there's an argument back against that, which says the wild populations in percentage to the stock populations are so small that there's no way that the wild populations could sustain the number of people who fish, anglers, on the rivers in New Jersey. There's just no way.
Right. And basically, and I kind of said this to him. I said, it's nice that you personally know some nice wild trout streams in New Jersey. There's a couple. I know a couple as well, but I'm not delusional enough to think that if all the stocked places stopped getting stocked fish and only the places that have decent wild trout populations existed, the amount of anglers, those anglers that like to fish for trout and are okay fishing for the stocked sections, aren't just gonna go, oh, okay, well, we just won't fish for trout anymore. They're gonna look for and eventually find this small amount of decent wild trout streams, right? I mean,
there are numerous ones that actually didn't have wild trout up to 10 years ago that now have browns coming up in, but they're few and far between. They're not the rule, they're the exception.
Right. And like you said, the amount of anglers we have in New Jersey, the trout anglers specifically, I mean, it just couldn't, it wouldn't be able to sustain it.
No. And the reason you pay for your trout stamp is so that money is allocated to fish that are intended to be harvested by anglers in the rivers and even still bodies of water, such that their purpose is to be harvested.
Right.
So there's catch and release, there's TCAs, there's the gorge, the Point Mountain section, all different areas that are catch and release, while you have public sections like Lansdowne and the lower sections of the South Branch, and even upper sections that allow between the Claremont to Highbridge that allow public access and stocking, because in order for the state to stock, there must be public access.
All right. Sorry. So let me tell you. Let me bring this part up. So let's say they now said, "Oh, okay. Well, what if we just stop stocking the rivers that do have sustainable now wild brown trout?" Right. So a river section or entire river watershed, whatever, that has wild brown trout. They obviously they're not native. They were put here. They were stocked here. They took and they now spawn on their own, and there's wild brown trout fishery there. What if we stopped stocking those rivers altogether? Would you be for or against that?
In my opinion, I would have to divert to the biologists because they're the ones that make the decisions at the end. But in my opinion, I guess putting rainbows in with browns is not a bad thing.
All right. Well, and you bring up the biologists. I mean, they have kind of flip-flopped a couple of times on what they believe is the right move. And I guess, I mean, that's science in a way, right? You find new things as you go. But I'm trying to think of a specific example. I mean, let's just think of we have one native trout, right? We have native brook trout. There's native brook trout streams. Brown trout that were originally stocked eventually made it, into those sections deeper and deeper, and have definitely pushed a lot of that native brook trout out, and kind of like not taking it over completely, but definitely dominated the native fish to a point. And obviously we have to just accept, I mean, they're there. You can, just like any other invasive species, they're there, they're established. You can't get rid of them. Not that I would want to anyway, but I mean, do we just let that? I guess we let that happen. You got the wild browns, you got the native wild brook trout, and we got the stocked and or holdover rainbows that exist all in the set. A lot of places have all three. Some places are mostly the wild brown trout, and other places are mostly these stocked rainbows that kind of take foot, where they can hold over, and they kind of stick around and hold over.
Right. And if you circle back to 2014 and previous to that year, maybe 2013, the state stocked 2 weeks of brookies, 2 weeks of rainbows, and the last 2 weeks was always browns.
Yeah, they stocked everything.
Right. And now they only stock rainbows. So it's kind of coming back to some equilibrium level where all three species are available in the rivers. The most unique one or hard to catch are the brookies. The brookies are the hardest to catch and the hardest to find. So the state is trying to promote the brook trout population because they're the ones that are the original species to this area.
Yeah,
And that's my understanding, just as far as I know.
No, I think that's pretty accurate from my understanding as well. The only issue I've had, and we've talked about it before, so we won't get into it too much, but they want to preserve this, like the native brook trout like strain of DNA, and I just think they've stocked brook trout for so long till they stop till that point. I don't think there's any like I would be very surprised if there was any true like original native brook trout DNA like left untouched in these water systems.
You could be very spot on with that statement.
Anyway, so let me ask you this. So another another argument that's made all the time by these guys, and I just, you just give your opinion on it. Like I said, we invited these guys on. They kind of bitched out, and so we don't have another opinion. But you see these guys bash on people a lot for trout pictures and trout handling, right? So now, obviously, with a little bit of common sense as far as fish handling goes, most people don't believe that these fish are these super fragile creatures that these guys make them out to be. And the argument pretty much is that, like, if they see a picture of, and this all started from stock trout nonetheless, on the grass, like on the wet grass next to the stream, laying there for a picture, and then obviously released. They think these fish are dead. They think if a fish touches the ground or is touched with a dry hand or all this other stuff. And meanwhile, when trout are getting stocked, they're getting tossed off of bridges, bouncing off of like rocks and shit. I mean, I just think it's gone to a ridiculous level. I mean, what have you seen? Like when you're trout fishing, you see on opening day, you see dead trout floating everywhere. I mean, and I'm talking about I'm assuming you do opening day in one of your clubs, right? Those guys aren't keeping fish. So a lot of guys are fishing, I'm assuming. A lot of guys are catching fish. Do you see dead fish floating around everywhere from mishandling?
I don't.
And like, what's your opinion on these trout? Like, I mean, are they anywhere near as fragile as these guys make them out to be?
Well, the brook trout are the most, what we call main spleeny. In terms of, you have to handle them with the most care. The rainbows and browns are more hardy. As water temperatures go up, the browns and rainbows, the browns can handle the temperature increase better than the rainbows. So my big thing is, if you're going to handle them with your hands, make sure you get your hands wet.
Okay.
So that when you take a picture with them, go to put them back out of the net, your hands are wet. So that way the slime on the fish's, body does not get pulled off, because that slime is so important. And you think slime is like a Ghostbusters word, but it's not. It's important to a fish.
And now, all right, so you kind of do have an argument towards what they're saying, and I know all this too. But my rebuttal to that would be, if you can pick a fish up out of the water without getting your hand wet to do it, I mean, you're a fucking magician. Like, how would you even do that? You know what I'm saying? I guess if you picked it up with the net first and then reached into the net, but I mean, that's just making it harder for yourself. So I think most guys, so most guys are going to net the fish, right, but not lift it out of the water. I don't lift any fish out of the water, even on a boat. I scoop the net under, it's in the net, it stays in the water. That's the easiest way to handle it and the safest. So you got a trout now in the net, in the water, you go to pick it up. I mean, your hand's getting wet doing that. But I do get what you're saying.
It's more so with gloves, Chris. Like if you have gloves on in the cold and you're wearing like wool gloves.
I get it. I don't wear.
Handle the fish, that wool takes the slime off of the fish. So
yeah, I don't wear gloves. I'm not a little bitch, but Joe's definitely
Me
been.
neither.
Joe's been blasted on for picking up a trout with gloves. Actually, is he still there? He's not there, so we can make fun of him all we want. He got disconnected. Anyway, so all right, so we're kind of on the same page there. Now this slime coat, and I don't know if you know this or not, or if we have to ask a biologist, but I've been told by people who should know that this slime coat does regenerate fairly quickly as long as it's not a substantial loss. So basically, if I pick up a fish and he wiggles and kind of brushes up against my shirt and loses a little bit of that slime, I let him go. Within a couple of hours, he's going to start regenerating that slime. Now, if I drop him on myself and rub his entire body on both sides all over me, now I'm probably put the fish in a pretty shitty situation.
There's a tolerance, so much that they can take. But again, I'm not an expert on this. I just follow basic guidelines, which are get your hands wet, hold the fish up, put them back down, and there's no issue. Dry hands equal a bad situation for the fish, or dry shirt, or whatever the situation is that you're explaining.
Don't rub the fish all over you guys.
No. No. Unless you're planning on keeping the fish, no.
Oh, then it doesn't matter. You could do a football punt up to the street to your buddy. All right. So I'm gonna move on from this.
NJFishing.com, 27 years as the #1 resource in freshwater and saltwater fishing in New Jersey. Also, if you're looking for that next charter or party boat trip, they are all listed on the wall, NJF. Also, the forum, you could get onto the forum for free. They're separated freshwater and saltwater. All you have to do is email Jerry Zagorski, and tell them your username and password, and you're in. You log in. It gives you the entire backlog too, to the forum, so you could look at years and years of just posts and posts long before all this Facebook shit even started. NJFishing.com. Check it out today.
All right, so I want to jump a little bit now to the trout clubs. So,
Sure.
The trout clubs get a lot of hate from almost most guys that don't understand or have the view that I'm going to share give a lot of hate to the trout clubs because they're A, not in them, B, can't afford to join them, or C, I don't know, whatever. I'm not in one. I probably most likely will never be in one. I would fish it as a guest. I'm not like anti trout club, but my biggest thing with the trout clubs is when the state stopped stocking browns and brook trout and only started with the rainbows, a couple years ago, quite some time now, actually. To me, the clubs are picking up that slack, right? And they're putting their stock. I don't think, you correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think the clubs stock brook trout. Nobody stocks brook trout as far as I know.
No.
I don't think they're allowed to. The only place they are allowed to in certain places, but for the most part, anywhere where it connects to like a native brook trout stream, I don't think they're allowed to. But like some ponds and stuff and some watersheds that don't connect to anything, they are. But anyway, those fish that the clubs stock, these trout clubs aren't allowed to put up any kind of barrier to keep these fish in their specific sections of river, correct?
Correct. Other than a wire that goes
to keep the
across
people
the
out.
river for a line of access to say
That's for
you
people.
can't cross
That's
this
right.
point of the river.
Right.
And then also the other way that the clubs keep them in is by using feed. So pellets.
Right.
So that keeps the fish, for the most part, in that section. Does it always work? No.
Most of the guys in the club, I don't think, are keeping a lot of these fish, right? There are a lot of catch and release guys. I'm sure some of them keep. But for the most part, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, these clubs are stocking more fish than their anglers, their members, are taking.
That's true. It depends on the club, because there's multiple clubs on the muskie that are a variety of catch and release fly fishing only to a limit of 3 during certain periods of the year. So
Okay.
even though the state has their limits, the club sets their limits for the number of trout that you can keep, depending upon which club. And clubs do promote the health of the river through stocking, and that comes through dues, donations, things of that nature that provide funds to stock the river. And I'm speaking specifically to the muskie.
Okay. And now, and a lot of guys might not know this, and I don't know every club there is. I'm sure you don't either, because you can't search these clubs really. Like if you go on Google and you type in private trout clubs, you're not going to get a list of trout clubs and how to contact them. It's almost kind of like a semi-secret society type thing where you have to know someone already, and or like, you know,
Right. It's
um,
it's called a sponsorship. Somebody has to sponsor you for the club in order to get in, and then you get in on a waiting list. And depending upon which club has a variety of anywhere from a year to 16 years of waiting.
wow.
So,
Yeah, I've heard that. And because they limit the members, obviously, because they want the members pay good money to be in these clubs, and you know, you don't want to show up to the club and it be like public opening day trout season here in New Jersey. But what I was alluding to basically is uh, public water anglers that have no intentions of joining a private trout club should still be thankful for these private trout clubs. I know I am, because I fish public waters a pretty decent ways away from any, you know, trout club wire that I see hanging across the river, and I catch what I'm, you know, pretty sure are fish stocked by them, like big stocked fish that, you know, especially if it's a brown. I know the state didn't put that in anytime recently, you know, and you know, it's almost like I know that the trout clubs probably hate that their fish get out and guys that aren't in the club, uh, you know, catch them that didn't pay for it, obviously, but I think they should, you know, they should use it as almost like a charity to the state, like they're doing something good. They're helping stock the rivers, just like what the state stopped stocking. The private trout clubs are stocking those fish. I mean, most of them stick around for the feeders and whatnot, but plenty of them get out and inhabit the public rivers. And if it's a river that has a cold, you know, cold mountain streams feeding into it, or deep pools that stay cool during the summer, those fish are going to hold over and, you know, live indefinitely there. And they get big because they start off bigger.
spot on. I mean, it is uh, a supplement to
Yeah.
what the state is already doing to help enhance the fishery in New Jersey.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, look, like I said, guys could believe me or not believe me. Like, I don't know the exact distance, but I'm talking a couple of miles at least away from the closest club, and you're catching, you know, these club stocked fish, and you know, who knows how long it could have been stocked years ago, and these fish are holding over in a lot of our streams, but without any stocking program, I mean, I think the quality of fish is just gonna go right down the drain, I would think.
I agree with you, especially the brown trout, because there's only so many wild brown trout. Like for every probably 20 browns I catch one wild.
Yeah, I think that'll depend on where you are specifically, because I've had stretches where wild brown trout just highly outnumber anything else every time. But you're talking small wild brown trout. And
Sure.
if you catch a 16, 17, 18 incher, I mean, that's a big wild brown trout in a lot of these sections. And that kind of leads me to my one last thing about this, and then we could get into the RVTA.
Awesome.
A lot of these guys, right? These guys think that, and I'm just talking about this. I'm not talking about all fly fishermen. I'm specifically talking about this little niche of, like, I've started calling them flyocrats, because they're just like these elitist guys that I swear they only fly fish because they think it, like, helps them believe they're better than all other anglers, rather than to fly fish just to have fun. And they seem to believe that anytime they catch a brown trout, that it's wild for a variety of reasons that are impossible to prove. And so basically, and I want your opinion on this. So if I catch, let's say I'm catching little wild brown trout, and I catch a 20-inch brown trout. It looks kind of wild. It looks, I can't tell. These guys will immediately say it's a wild brown trout, called a giant wild brown trout. And I would ask, well, like, how would you possibly know that? How do you know where this fish, like, how do you know someone didn't stock this fish a couple years ago? Because from what I see, when a fish, even a stocked fish, lives in the wild for a certain amount of time, I mean, they get that vibrant colors. The brown trout gets that blue in the cheeks. It doesn't guarantee it's a wild fish.
No.
And it's just crazy to me that they put this regard, like this crazy regard, on, like, knowing they're catching a wild brown trout when they couldn't possibly know in many of the situations. Sometimes you can be pretty sure, based on where you are sometimes, or what the fish looks like. But it's just something that I truly believe you really can never be 100%, not never, but you usually can't be 100% sure, at least.
Well, there's a couple of qualities in the fish that you look for. The first thing I look for is the tail. Is the tail square? Like, perfectly square at the end, meaning on a 90-degree angle to the horizontal. The second factor I look at is the coloration. What's the coloration of the fish? Then the third thing that I look for are the fin markings. Because usually when a brown is stocked, it'll have a clipped fin. If there's no clipped fin or regrowth of a fin, that's your third indication. If you match all three factors, and all three match what was just said, then that fish is wild. The coloration, the fins, and the tail.
So if it doesn't have a clipped fin, it's got that like bright coloration, and the tail isn't like worn down on the bottom.
Right.
And I can agree with all.
Yeah.
Okay. And like, I can agree with all that. That all makes sense. But sometimes, and I've caught fish that, for every other reason, I have to believe that it's a stocked fish, but it has every single full out grown perfect fin and tail fin and really bright colors. And I'll just try to explain why I'm pretty sure it's a stocked fish. So, and I'll try to find this picture and I'll show it to you and I'll pop it up here. I'm fishing fairly close to where I've seen a club chain before in this scenario. And I catch this rainbow. Now this rainbow was gigantic. It looked almost like a fat steelhead. Had this purple tint and like this totally vibrant colors. All of its fins had this vibrant like purple hue coloring, and they were full and big. The fins, the tail. It was just a perfect fish. Where if I caught this fish, out somewhere where rainbows are native and wild, there'd be no question in my mind that it was a wild fish. But because I was near a club and this thing was gigantic and I was in a pretty small stream, I had to believe. Like, I don't think this fish was wild, but it fit all the criteria of a wild fish. And that's why I believe that you can never truly 100% tell every single time that a fish is either wild or stocked. Like, there's just too many variables, I think.
In New Jersey, I agree with you 100%, but it's attention to detail. Look at the fish very, very, very closely. At some point, you might see a fin on one side symmetrically that's a little bit different than the other. And you have to look at all the fins, the dorsal, the pectoral, all of the fins, because they might clip a back fin, they might clip a front fin. Depends on who stocked the fish. And if it wasn't stocked, then they should have perfectly symmetrical fins, no matter what, with a completely square tail. And with the coloration of the rainbows, it's more difficult to tell. If it's a wild rainbow, it won't look like a silver hybrid, which is what the state stocks, basically.
Well, let me add, like, what if you have a wild fish and like a snapping turtle like bites one of its fins off?
Well, then that's a unique situation. That's always.
I bet you that happens pretty often.
It could, sure.
I don't know. I'm just like I said. I'm just kind of. I just don't. I think there's too many variables to every fish you catch to just hold it and be able to tell 100%. Oh, this is stocked or this is wild. I mean, and when it comes right down to it, and this is my final like opinion on any of this, the bottom line really is like, I don't know, who cares really? Like, yeah, it's cool to catch a fish that is wild or that you think is wild. It's a cool concept, but they were stocked here. Like, that wild fish came from either this generation or two or three before it or whatever it is. It came from a stocked fish. It's not like it's a native creature that lived here. So, okay, it's cool. It came from a stocked fish at some point, maybe a couple of generations ago. It's wild. It has nice colors. It's cool. Some of these stocked fish are just as beautiful as some of these wild fish. I mean, they're gorgeous. A lot of the fish, a lot of the brown trout that these clubs stock are gorgeous fish. A lot of them, they take amazing care of these fish.
I agree with you 100%. There's a point at which you really can't tell. You just can't.
And it's almost like
they've been in long enough, you can't tell.
And it's just kind of like, who cares? Like, if it's been in there, if it's held over for a while, it's fighting you just as hard as a wild fish. I mean, it's been living in the river. It's basically a wild fish. It just wasn't born there. Just because it was raised in a hatchery years and years ago, if it's still alive and thriving in the river in the wild for a couple of years, it's a wild fish in my mind. I just don't get the obsession with, oh, it's a wild fish and that's a stocked fish. The stocked fish doesn't count. Well, what if it held over for a couple of years? It fought me just as hard. I'm out there catching it. That's a fact. I'm telling you, it's fighting just as hard.
I agree with you 100%, Chris.
I don't know. That's it. That's my last take on the whole thing. But Deuce, do we have to stare at Joe's face this whole time, or can we dump his picture because it's all right? We're gonna leave it there and stare at it. Andy, do you want to make fun of Joe real quick before we jump into the RVTA?
He's fishing for catfish. I don't know. That's a show on MTV. So not necessarily angling expertise.
Yeah, it looked like he was getting catfished. I mean, he basically did. He got conned into going on this trip with the promise of big fish, and I think they caught a couple of like 3-pound invasive blue catfish. But I'm sure he has a video on it, and he'll put it together, and everyone can laugh.
I'll tell you what, if you want to catch the biggest catfish, you go to Round Valley.
Well, not blue. They don't have blue catfish.
I've ever caught are in Round Valley,
but not blue catfish.
No, I believe they're channel cats.
Yeah. No, I you know what? I've heard it and I've seen guys catch them with the pictures. I've never specifically targeted catfish there. And honestly, I don't think many people do. And you're probably spot on. It's a underlooked fishery.
It is. You catch them trolling in the middle of the summer.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
so I can
like, who would think, catch a catfish.
And I can only imagine then if you actually targeted them the right way, what kind of results you'd have. We might have to change. Maybe we talk to Mike and see if we can change Round Valley Trout Association to Round Valley Trout and Catfish Association.
That would be a question for Mike.
Anyway, all right. So getting to RVTA, Round Valley Trout Association. You guys just did. Do you do multiple of these big stockings, or is this the big one?
This is the big one in terms of the brown trout, trophy trout, which includes memorial trout. So there's one more stocking that's with the state. That'll be April 9th. And we'll put out all the fish, all rainbows that the state gives us, which is somewhere in approximate 6,600-ish, give or take. But this one was 45 trophies. 15 of them were Goldens. One was Big Bertha, which is a brown trout.
How big
26 inches.
Okay.
And then 710 little tiny, like 7, 8-inch, 9-inch brown trout. And
do they ever tag those littler ones or have a way of tracking them? Or
we used to. We don't anymore because it made more sense just to stock them than to tag them, because then they get confused with what's considered a trophy trout, rather than a trophy trout program.
Do they clip the fins on those so that you can like if you catch one 5 years from now and you can look and say, okay, the right side dorsal fin was clipped on the 2024 stocking, so this fish is X years old?
That's a question for Vern. I'm not 100%. He's the expert.
Okay.
I know the state does. I'm not sure as far as Muskie Trout Hatchery, which is where we get our trophy trout from.
Okay, but no, the reason I asked anyways is because just anyone who doesn't know, obviously anyone that fishes there already knows this, but the Round Valley Reservoir very easily holds over trout. Like trout don't die there in the summer like they do in, most of the stretches of, say, the Rockaway River, where the state dumps them in, people catch them, keep them. And then when the summer rolls around in a lot of those stretches, anything that hasn't been caught pretty much dies, gets eaten, whatever. Round Valley, place like Round Valley, these fish, if they're not caught and kept, and if they're released and live, they survive and hold over indefinitely.
They do. The issue with stocking the bigger fish is that they're not used to foraging, which is why we stock so many little browns.
Okay.
Because once they're small, they have no choice but to forage. So
So
stocking those little ones, they have a greater chance to grow bigger because they're used to eating shiners, herring, bugs, all of the things that they don't get at the hatchery.
okay, that makes sense. So the smaller fish actually have a better chance of holding over and, becoming natural type fish in this environment.
For browns, for the most part, the rainbows seem to grow a little slower,
Yeah,
but the browns grow quickly. Yes,
and I feel
especially
like
with the herring coming back.
in a lot of places the rainbows don't do anywhere near as well as the browns in an open water environment.
Right. I would agree with that. Even though the rainbows are doing very well at Round Valley, it's
Yeah.
just that there's so many exponentially. There's almost 10 times more rainbows stocked than browns.
Oh,
So
wow.
for the fact that people are catching 6-7 pound browns, is a testament to the stocking program. It really is. Joe Sikowski does just an awesome job with this. And Mike Connery has implemented the memorial trout, so even though the bigger trout don't necessarily stand to grow in terms of being able to forage like the little ones, having those big trout for a year gives us a great opportunity to go out and catch these tagged fish, win prizes, and win them in names of loved ones, which was a program that was recently implemented by Mike Connery.
Yeah, that's a really cool idea too. It's kind of like that you don't hear it so much anymore, but you used to hear the commercials on the radio where you could name an unnamed star after a relative,
Right.
like some obscure like star that you can't even see unless it's dead clear and you have a Hubble telescope in your back. But this is cooler than that if you ask me, because it's like these fish, they get a tag with like a matching
Number.
number on the tag, and it's pretty cool. And then if someone catches it and kind of reports it like, oh, I caught the fish that was a memorial of your loved one that passed away, and that the donation went toward it. It's a really cool idea.
It was a great idea, and he came up with it with the rest of the club, and just awesome that it got implemented by Joe Sikowski.
Do you win something like a little prize from the club for turning that in, or how does that work?
There'll be some prizes. You win if you catch a standard trophy trout with a tag in the same year,
Mm-hmm.
you get a trophy trout hat, which is a really, really cool hat. Like,
Is that the only
something
way
that
you can
have
get
to
that hat?
earn. What's that?
Is that the only way you can get that hat?
Is if you catch the trophy trout in the year it was stocked.
But I'm saying that's the only way you can buy it, right? Like
You can't
Santiago
buy
can't
it.
Santiago
buy
can't
it.
buy this hat, right?
No.
All right, that's pretty cool then.
You have to earn it.
That's pretty cool. And I just want to add in also that, again, for anyone that doesn't know, I know this is obvious to any of the RVTA members or guys that fish Round Valley, but Round Valley is coming back in like a huge way because of the efforts of Round Valley Trout Association, paired up with the fact that they finally filled the reservoir back up. And so Round Valley, the fishing in Round Valley was always good, I'd say, but mostly based on the efforts of the RVTA stocking. I think now it's going to be amplified by like the old school. And I didn't fish Round Valley back then. You did, I'm assuming?
I did.
Like back in its glory days, like where you can look at the records, right, and see all the state records that were caught in Round Valley. I think it's going back to that. I think it's going to make it back to that.
It's a sine wave, unfortunately, because of pumping up, pumping down. Round Valley is used for drinking water to maintain the level of the South Branch so that the head gates down in Bridgewater get enough drinking water for 70% of the state. There's an ebb and flow effect. So the better you can maintain that straight line graph rather than a sine wave, the fishery will maintain itself as long as the bait fish are there, which we stock 500,000 approximately shiners, thanks to Mike Roman. And then also the herring population coming back due to the state pumping the levels back up, where we do believe that there were still jack herring in there. And then with the structure that we created, allowed for a spawning environment such that the herring could reproduce. And we were getting pictures of little tiny ones in the beginning. And then you might have seen in the newsletter that there were a little bit bigger ones. And rainbows that were kept were full of them. And they're just going to get gorged on those herring. I mean, that's the way the fish get big. They have to have something to eat.
And that's the best news out of anything that's happened. That's the best news that could possibly be, because that, like, those herring as a main forage, that's what grows big fish. I mean, look at Hopakong, look at how Round Valley used to be. That's why. So
yes, the issue with Round Valley is that there's no feeder stream like Spruce Run or Hopakong.
Yeah.
So it creates a challenge in the sense of we have to keep them there, and we know we lost them. They crashed.
Yeah.
And they crashed because of the fact that there was a lack of phytoplankton and a lack of incoming flow of water. So if we can keep the water level up at Round Valley with the structure, then we can keep the bait fish, which means we're going to get back to where we were 25 years ago, 30 years ago, with those massive fish. And you see Matt Yannetta's Laker. I mean, that Laker had to have been eating something. Now, could be eating anything, but there's also a huge population of yellow perch, other small fish. I mean, I've caught rainbows that I've kept. They spit up little sunfish and largemouth bass in the live well. They're eating what they can and have eaten what they can until the herring came back.
Yeah.
We really didn't have any definite proof of herring coming back until recently.
Yeah, I you know what, I didn't believe it until I saw it with my own eyes too, and they're definitely there. I mean, the proof is definitely there now. Yeah, it's awesome, man. I think, and let's be honest, Round Valley can be an intimidating place to fish if guys haven't fished there, and my recommendation to them is always the same, and it's the same for Lake Hopakong too, because Lake Hopakong is a pretty big lake. It could be intimidating for a new angler or a shore-based angler who just bought a kayak or something like that. Join the club associated with the lake. Lake Hopakong's got the Knee Deep Club, which unfortunately has not upgraded their registration process, so you have to physically go and get a piece of paper and fill it out. Round Valley Trout Association for Round Valley. You guys did update your website. It did give me an issue that's being fixed, I think you said, right? Or it might have just been me.
Yes.
I'm not sure.
No
But
worries, we'll get it fixed.
you can sign up online through there, because I'm like the most forgetful person in the world, and I forgot to do it. And when I went to go do it the other day, it didn't seem to work. But you guys have that fixed, I'm sure, pretty quickly. And but yeah, that's my advice to anyone who would like to take advantage of these fisheries, like Round Valley, already a good fishery, only going to get better. I would bet money on that, and I'm not a gambling man.
It's
Join.
it's the only state public access club that gets stocked by a private club. So state access public park that gets stocked by a private club and the state. There's no other entity of its kind where you can join as an individual for $30 or $35 for a family. And that's up to 22 years of age of children in the household.
I think Knee Deep Club, I guess, would be considered their private club as well. You join, there's public access to Lake Opakon, and they do stock it. But like I said, they're not doing themselves any favors, making it easy for people to sign up there. And last year or 2 years ago, a couple of you guys came on. I think Matt and Mike, they all came on, and I applauded them for taking that like technological jump to do that. And
Right.
because it's just, I mean, this day and age, that's all the excuse people need. And I was one of them. I was like, nah, I keep forgetting to grab a flyer when I'm at the bait shop. I keep forgetting to ask for it, and you end up just not joining. You make it available online. You make it easy because guys want to join. I mean, there's too much to gain from it, too much information, too much
And that's perfect because we just ran a huge fishing seminar where we had approximately 70 members and new members in attendance, where we had 10 presenters on different topics on how to approach fishing, not just Round Valley, but any of the fisheries in the state, using electronics, boat control, dipsy divers, downriggers, lead core, planer boards. It was a great day. There was just absolute overwhelming response in terms of how well the information was perceived. And now anglers, members of Round Valley, who might go back and forth between other organizations and lakes, can apply that information in a way that produces fish. And that's what we want to do. We want to educate people. We don't want to be secretive about what we do, but at the same time, we can't do it for you. You have to go out and apply it. Right. So the seminar was a huge success. Just overwhelming in the responses that we've gotten in terms of how well the information was absorbed, and the presenters did such a great job. And again, Mike Connery just did a fantastic job in making sure this happened. If you saw on Facebook, he put out a vote to see who wanted the seminar. There was an overwhelming number of members and non-members who wanted to have a seminar. We had it. There was a lot of work that was put into it, and the 10 presenters just did a fantastic job.
That's awesome. Yeah. And when it comes to social media, a lot of the stuff like just gets, swept under the rug, like if the algorithms don't choose to show you and stuff. So I hope you guys know that you can post anything you want into our groups. If you ever have something like this big coming up, send it to us and ask us to share it, or just tag us or whatever so we can share it on our stuff, because the more people that see it, the better, obviously.
This is on Facebook, Chris. This is the Cold Water Shootout. This is on Saturday. So you can sign up at Sporting Life, or you can send an email to rvtafishingclub@gmail.com.
That's this Saturday?
This Saturday.
All right, well, this won't come out till Friday, so you'll have a little bit of time if you're watching it when it comes out.
Yes.
But send me that, or post it into our Facebook group or send it to me.
I think Mike Connery shared it with on multispecies, if I'm not correct.
All right. If you want to also send it to us
but I can send it
on
to you,
Instagram, we could put it on there. We'll just post it right on there too.
That way it gets up right away. Yeah, sure.
Yeah. Well, Andy, I mean, is the Round Valley RVTA is doing amazing. It's so cool to see. It's so cool to see the fishery coming back. I think your memberships are up, what, 300%? Going to be 400%. You're projecting something like that. Is that what you said?
From 3 years ago, 500 to 600%.
Wow. I mean,
and we're our first Fisher Person of the Year tournament, regular tournament, is April 13th, and we're doing all of our tournaments on Sundays now. So it gives people who are working possibly on Saturdays a chance to fish the tournaments, whereas we used to alternate back and forth.
Okay.
So all the tournaments are on Sundays. And then our next meeting is April 17th at the Firehouse, 1 New Street in Clinton, where there'll be an opportunity for all members to have a flea market table set up to sell items that they may not need. And then moving after that, we're into the kids fishing derby at the Mott Pond in Clinton, which was a huge, huge success last year. Much thanks to Paul Arnold and his mother for setting that up with us. They're wonderful people, also members, and the kids just had a great day. It was just awesome.
That sounds
and we have a full calendar of events. I mean, moving into the summer, our big thing is July 17th is our annual picnic. So for all members, you come out, you get food, you get a presentation, and that's right at the ramp, the lower ramp, below the ramp.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. I mean, it's all great. I hope a couple of people listening to this, at least, that aren't members, will consider joining. Spread the word. Go fishing on Round Valley, even if you're not a member. See how much you like it, and then maybe you'll want to be a member after that. It's all great, man. I couldn't be happier. You love to see it. You love to see the success of a nonprofit club like RVTA that does so much for the reservoir there, and you love to see the reservoir coming back. Yeah.
And thank you for your support, Chris. You and Joe, we really appreciate the partnership we have with you. The fact that you guys have been members for quite a few years, and that you just project our mission, which is enhancing the fishery at Round Valley, in such a positive way. So thank you.
Yeah, dude, it's our pleasure, honestly. I mean, it's all great. We love it. Usually Joe likes to let the guest go and then do a little rant himself and keep the episode going. But since we've been staring at a still frame of Joe that looks like it's from the movie Taken, I'm gonna end the episode with you on here. So if you want to say suffer for the fish to end the episode, I usually say it, but
hey, suffer for the fish, man. I suffered on Sunday. It was so damn cold.
You got to do it, man. We love it. All right, take care, man.
Thank you for having me, Chris.
You got it.
Bye.